So, this is Steve. I wanted to do a sub-review of this merge request to see if everything is working as expected. So, this is updating the periodically calculate service, which will, at a high overview, will go through all the users and trigger a new refresh over range worker. So it will trigger a bunch of jobs. Um, but inside of a cell, we started seeing some problems, and this is because of how this service trigger creates jobs. So right now, it uses the min user ID and the max user ID. It doesn't really look at there's any gaps or whatsoever, which is fine for GitLab.com. But for a cell, it's becoming a problem because we use large IDs. So user ID is an int64, and a cell uh, have IDs that start with 1 trillion, for example, for cell 3. So that means if we ever migrate user ID 10 inside of cell 3, the main value will be 10. And like, for example, let's say another user gets created, it will be, for example, 1 trillion. That would mean with a batch of 450, which is our current setting, we will create 2.2 billion no-op jobs. And we can see this here. So if we do raise console, we start the raise console on the master branch. And in production, we're seeing this crashing the Redis cluster, right? So if we look at what users I have in the database, I have from 1 to 72, and then I have 1 trillion here, right? So if I start the worker, you can see here this kind of hangs because it's getting the min from user and the max from users. That's 1 trillion, and then creating those 2.2 billion jobs, right? Um, Now, what I'm changing here is the service itself. So we remove fetching the min max, and we start using user.each batch. Now there is a comment here explaining why we didn't use user.each batch because of job deduplication, because if the arguments are the same, meaning we always use min max, so the arguments of the batches are always going to be the same. We do job deduplication, which is a nice optimization. But in reality, we don't seem to be deduplicating anything at all. So I don't think we should optimize for that. And this it's crashing the Redis database, so it is a performance and availability concern that we need to fix, right? So it's using each user.each batch, still using the correct batch, the same batch size, so that is 450 here. And then inside of the each loop, we're getting the start ID and end ID by getting the min and max ID of that relation, and then starting the worker as before with the start ID and end ID. So this is actually taking the specific IDs and in consideration. So if we have user ID 10 and then the next one is 1 trillion, it's not going through creating all those jobs, right? So that's it. That's it for the service itself. I also took a stab at updating the tests to be a bit more um, expressive. So let's start. I updated it to create 6 users. And the reason for this is because we're already deleting 2. And since we're no longer using min-max, it's not running uh, 3 jobs because we update the batch size here, but it was actually running just 2 jobs. So we weren't seeing that like it wasn't testing that we're actually skipping those IDs. So I updated this to um, check if there's the correct ID range here. So getting all the users by plugging remaining users by plugging the IDs, and then calculating the batch size. And we expect that to be expected batches, go through all the expected batches, and make sure that the delay and the batch is the same, pass to the worker. So here we're pre-computing the batches separately and making sure that the worker calculates it as expected, or the service calculate response workers as expected. And then we another one is thank use proportional jobs proportional to user count, not range ID here. So um, here we're checking, how many users there are remaining. We expect this to be, so in our case, we have six, we're deleting two, right? So that's four. Um, the batch size is two, so we expect this to be executed two times. Um, and then we also task with large gaps ID. So we're creating a user with 1 trillion ID and making sure that, again, we're calculating the batch, getting the total count, and making sure it's only three rather than 2.2 billion. So there is some performance implications around user.each batch, and I left this in the merge request. So it is going to run a lot more queries. So the first one is to get the first user ID, and then here is to get the batch size. So that's why we're doing an offset for 400. And this will run multiple times, right? That's potentially one of the performance problems on this merge request. And then it's getting the min-max IDs for those, right? So if we see it here, we can go to this branch, start JDK, Rails console, sorry. And we will see uh, that it runs almost instantly. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.